Hello and welcome. You're watching News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and joining me here in the studio is my colleague Kabir Naqvi as we discuss an important issue that has become a huge political row, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu and elsewhere. Well, a constant tug-of-war between state governments and governors has often been the defining feature of the uneasy relationship that exists between most opposition-led state governments and the gubernatorial officials appointed by the party in power at the centre. But recent years have seen ties between the two sides plumbing new depths. And now it seems chief ministers of non-BJP-ruled states have decided to wage a collective war on governors. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has written to Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin saying he would consider the latter's proposal to pass a resolution in the State Assembly to fix a time limit for governors to approve bills adopted by the House. Vijayan added that he would extend his full support to Stalin in this regard. So how did it all start? After passing a resolution against Governor R.N. Ravi in the State Assembly, demanding that the Centre and the President of India set a time frame for governors to decide on files cleared by elected governments, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin last week wrote a letter to Chief Ministers of non-BJP-ruled states appealing to them to plan similar resolutions in their respective assemblies. Why this tussle? Well, Tamil Nadu passed this resolution after the governor indefinitely withheld several bills that had been passed by the legislature and sent to him for his approval. In the letter, Stalin says, and I quote, "I'm sure that you will agree with the spirit and content of the resolution and extend your support in this regard to uphold the sovereignty and self-respect of the state governments and the legislators by passing a similar resolution in your state assembly." Stalin argues that the constitution has clearly defined the roles of the state and the central governments and governors, but some governors today are indefinitely holding various bills passed by the legislatures, which brings the state administration to a standstill in such areas. The Kerala governor, Arif Mohammed Khan, too, has been sparring with the state government led by the CPM over multiple issues. The Kerala chief minister says certain bills passed by the assembly have been kept pending by the governor for an unduly long time, some for more than a year. This despite the fact that ministers and officials had personally visited the governor and given clarifications sought by his office. And it's not just southern states versus governors. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who's had a power tussle with successive lieutenant governors of the national capital for years now, has also stated that a similar resolution will be tabled in the Delhi Assembly. In fact, Kejriwal has gone as far as to say that democracy in India is suffering body blows every day. No constitutional functionary should think that they are a law unto themselves and that there should be collective resistance against any action to decimate or obliterate state governments. That's what Kejriwal says. The question is, can opposition parties unitedly pressure the centre and the governors appointed by it into backing off? And then there is the larger debate. Are governors indeed acting as agents of the centre and stifling state governments? Some have asked, does India even need governors, with Raj Bhavans often being seen as retirement homes for aging politicians and union government loyalists? All right, let me now throw this open to our panel of guests. Joining me on the show is Amitabh Tiwari, political analyst. Also with us is K.C. Mittal, constitutional and legal expert. And of course, here with me in the studio is my colleague Kabir Naqvi. Amitabh Tiwari, let me begin with you. Given the letter written by Stalin to the chief ministers of non-BJP ruled states and the kind of response that he's managed to elicit, especially from the Kerala and the Delhi chief ministers, does it look like chief ministers of non-BJP ruled states are launching a collective war on the governors? And do you believe that there is sufficient justification for this?
I think, yeah, there is sufficient justification for it because we've seen that governors today are acting in a political manner. First of all, they are political appointees. And what has happened in the past is that active politicians also have been made governors and they have come back to join political life, like Mr. S.M. Krishna. See, there is a difference between the post of president and the governor. Both are figurative heads, but the president is elected with the help of the party in power, whereas the governor is sort of throttled down or appointed by the central government. Today, most of the governors though they have limited powers, are using their powers, whatever they have, to meddle with the affairs of the government and are not passing bills like in the case of Tamil Nadu or Kerala. Delhi is a different example because Delhi, there is a bit of a gray area between the rights of the LG and the chief minister. But in other states where specifically non-BJP chief ministers are facing issues with respect to their governors, I think that there needs to be some sort of a committee like we have for a CBI director or a Chief Justice of India, where the state government in power is also consulted before appointing any governor, and governors should not themselves be allow themselves to be used as political tools by the central government.
Governors should not allow themselves to be used as tools by the central government, but the opposition would argue that the experience so far has been very different. KC Mittal, let me come to you now. Looking at it really from the constitutional and legal standpoint, this is a debate that has gone on for years now, if not decades. I just want to quote to you what the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister and the MK President M.K. Stalin has said. Amongst other things, he says in his letter to other chief ministers that the sovereignty of the legislature is supreme in any democracy. No appointed governor shall undermine the legislative power and responsibilities of the elected governments. Now, this seems to be a growing chorus among non-BJP ruled states and chief ministers, including Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who seem to believe that the centre is constantly meddling in the affairs of the state governments and using their appointees in Raj Bhavan as tools for that purpose to further their agenda. Are governors in India adopting an increasingly obstructionist role? How do you see it?
Neha, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I think you have rightly put things. Let me first point out the fundamental principles as have been enumerated in the Constitution of India, where there is compartmentalization of the powers. Now, we are a democracy where the elected government has all the powers. Just look at the President of India. The President of India acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Nothing independent, except, of course, in a few cases which are provided in the Constitution. In the same principle applies to the states. Governors are, if I may put it with due respect, the kind of decorated head of the state. It doesn't overreach, it cannot overreach the government, elected government. All powers rest with the elected government. That's what the democracy is. The governor by himself or herself has no power. As a matter of fact, in the Constitution of India, the governor has to act on the aid of advice of the Council of Ministers, and it has been held by the Constitution bench also in Arunachal case, where ultimately the government was installed. But let me tell you one thing. I don't know why and who would respect the law and the Constitution. Today it's being flouted. My learned friend also made this point, and let me make it clear for Delhi also. The impression as is given is not correct. The Lieutenant Governor in Delhi also under Article 239 AA of the Constitution of India, it has not been amended so far. He has also to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers in all transfer subjects except 3 subjects. Therefore, neither the Lieutenant Governor Delhi or any other state or the governor has any independent power running parallel administration. They have only to go according to the state government. But unfortunately, all that is not happening. My learned friend rightly pointed out that normally the governors or the lieutenant governors used to be the senior retired bureaucrats, because then they used to go according to the Constitution, and in some cases even the retired judges also. But today the things are different. They are more political rather than showing their allegiance to the Constitution of India, although they are under oath. but it's being flouted day in and day out. Thanks to all of them, when they realize their responsibility as governors or the lieutenant governor. But as long as there is no check and balance, or as long as the Supreme Court doesn't question them or settle or point out, as in Delhi case the Supreme Court has done it, on what basis and which authority you have appointed 10 members to the MCD. Therefore, let me make it very clear that as far as the governor or including the Lieutenant Governor Delhi, they have very limited role to play, but they cannot act independent of except on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, which is the elected government, and one has to respect the elected government. It's a democracy. You are converting democracy into your own government and your own authority, which you don't have. The power given by the people is to the elected representatives, nobody else. You are basically maligning or disrespecting the people of the state who have elected a government. You have no right to question them. Therefore, my friend has rightly pointed out, and I would, with great respect to all, say very categorically that the governors or even the Lieutenant Governor Delhi, with due respect to all of them, they are overreaching, they are abusing their power, I can say with this, and they are not confining within the constitution framework.
Those are very strong words, and I have to say, Mr. Mittal, you have been absolutely crystal clear. You've made some very strong arguments. You believe whether it is the governor of a state or the lieutenant governor of a union territory like Delhi, no governor can act independently of the advice of the democratically elected state government, but many governors these days, or perhaps a majority of them, are political appointees, and you believe that they are in many cases abusing their powers and constitutional position. Before I take this to Kabir, I just want to read out a quote from Arvind Kejriwal. As I mentioned at the start of the show, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin set the ball rolling by reaching out to other chief ministers, writing this letter saying that you should take measures similar to the ones that have been taken by the Tamil Nadu government, and there has been support coming in from several other states, especially Kerala and Delhi. Now, Arvind Kejriwal, the Delhi Chief Minister, wrote back to M.K. Stalin saying, and these are strong words, Kabir, it's a foregone conclusion that democracy in India is suffering blows every single day. The interface of state governments and their governors or lieutenant governors has effectively become a battlefront where a silent war is being waged by the union government. Governors or lieutenant governors are willfully undermining democratically elected state governments and obstructing administration as per their whims and fancies. They have become the face of the deepening chasm between the union and the states run by non-BJP governments. Very, very strong words there from Arvind Kejriwal, Kabir. Obviously not for the first time, because we've seen that there has been a running battle between the Delhi government and the lieutenant governor for many years now. But now that we see many of these chief ministers of non-BJP ruled states actually coming together over this issue and urging each other to adopt similar resolutions in their respective state assemblies, the question is, how is this really likely to pan out politically? Again, a rallying point for opposition unity, as it were?
I was actually coming down to exactly that. Yesterday it was Congress's caste census card. Today we're looking at Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin urging his counterparts of non-BJP ruled states to adopt a similar resolution that the Tamil Nadu Assembly did. And rightly so. It's impossible for me to not look at it under the lens of the 2024 general elections as well. M.K. Stalin has been rallying his own support down south. K. Chandrasekhar Rao, I mean, we used these particular four figures in our background over here, but we must add there are other couples here as well. I remember when Jagdeep Dhankad was the governor of West Bengal, his skirmishes with Mamata Banerjee were quite...
Endless battles.
Were making the headlines.
Yes.
You know, the law and order situation. And it goes on to show that if you do your job well as a governor, you get elevated. He's now the vice president, isn't he? But at the same time, you know, both our panelists on the show as well are talking about how these are figurative heads with not a lot of power. On the other hand, There are some exceptions as well. In the Northeast, governors have had some extra powers. The governor's rule, if you take a look at what happened in the Congress's era, the one-party dominance, and now what we see right now. During the Congress, it was almost 1.1 governor's rule as per data each year. Now that doesn't happen anymore. But in the recent times, those tensions have again risen up, and the public psyche, the optics in front of the public, that is what matters. If you take a look at Arvind Kejriwal, who's denied his trip to Singapore, where he was going to showcase the Delhi model, but the governor comes and clamps down on that visit. He's like, you're not supposed to go. If you want to go, send your send one of your ministers. The chief minister shouldn't go. And the governor, like rightly pointed out, in the constitution and in terms of the compartmentalization of powers, has to work on the aid of the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the chief minister. But right now, what we're looking at, the chess pieces, the political chess pieces at play for everybody to consume out there is that Tamilisai Soundararajan not giving assent to bills for KCR, somebody like R.N. Ravi for the longest time. And the minute M.K. Stalin passes that particular resolution, the same day he passes the resolution on a ban on online gambling. So there is pressure also. And M.K. Stalin has shown that this, as an example, this works. Putting pressure on the governor really works. And ahead of 2024, it is certainly another rallying point for all the opposition parties, especially the non-BJP ruled states.
Absolutely. So it's not just the southern states versus governors. Clearly, you see other states, including Delhi, for example, ruled by a non-BJP party, coming together over this issue. But can these parties actually manage to, let's say, pressure the centre and these governors into backing off? Is that really going to happen? Let me take this back to Amitabh. Amitabh, of course, we've seen endless political battles between governors and chief ministers. Kabir gives an excellent example of Jagdeep Dhankar. We're not casting aspersions on anyone. But there is this popular perception that you carry on the agenda of the centre and you get rewarded. Some have linked Jagdeep Dhankar's elevation as Vice President of India to his tenure as a very controversial tenure or stint as governor of West Bengal, where he had a running battle with Mamata Banerjee. The question really is, and I want to raise a larger issue in this segment of our debate. Raj Bhavans are now seen as retirement homes for political loyalists. You mentioned earlier we used to have bureaucrats and former cops, but now these are largely retired politicians, some of whom actually even come back into active politics, in a sense cooling their heels at Raj Bhavan, often being rewarded, for not being given any plum post in, let's say, the party organization or any government. Therefore, if these are out-and-out political appointments and we constantly see these battles playing out between the governors and the chief ministers, some have asked, do we even need the post of governor in India?
See, a very important point has been raised by you. If we see what are the three fundamental duties of a governor, one is to decide who will form the government when there is a fractured mandate. This can be taken up by the election commission because election commission declares the results, and it in a way is very apparent which is the single largest party. Second is recommend president's rule to the center. This can be taken up by the Chief Justice of the various high courts. And the third is act as a repository in case of some controversial legislative bills. This role also can be taken up by the Judiciary Chief Justice of the various high courts. So, as you mentioned, we are spending crores of rupees on a figurative head which does not really have any power. It is a British era position. Because of a governor in place, there is a constant battle between the chief minister and the governor, which is leading to clashes and not allowing the chief ministers or the constitutionally elected governments to function properly. See, what is also happening, you mentioned the example of Jagdish Dhankar, is that many governors now see that if you start interfering with the state government, then you might get rewarded, and most of them are now copying each other. What BJP has to think and realize is that while nationalism works for them in the national elections, sub-nationalism also works for regional parties in state elections. So by imposing somebody from outside and not letting the constitutionally elected government function, this could actually backfire and create a sympathy for the regional parties, at least in the state elections. And one last point, especially with respect to Delhi, BJP has to realize that AAP is a party which has been born out of a movement. It thrives in case of confrontation. It's something like Modi. The more you attack Modi, the more popular he grows. Arvind Kejriwal and AAP are of a similar nomenclature. And if you allow them confrontation, then they are able to, or rather they will be able to further consolidate their position, especially in Delhi.
Interesting, the comparison that you're making between Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and his party, the Aam Aadmi Party, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that, a similar kind of political narrative seems to have worked for them in the past, and it continues to work to their advantage even now. But coming back to this larger issue that we're debating, KC Mittal, I think Amitabh Tiwari makes some interesting and relevant points. He says the gubernatorial office is essentially a relic of the colonial era. We spend way too much taxpayers' money on maintaining Raj Bhavans. At the end of the day, the job that is supposed to be done by a governor can very well be handled by the High Court of a state or the Election Commission. And now that you have a scenario where governors are increasingly accused of acting as political puppets of the government at the center, the question really is it time to consider doing away with this ceremonial post altogether?
Now, with due respect to my friend, I disagree with him. Number one, you can't give this power to the judiciary. Judiciary has, under the Constitution, a different role to perform, which has nothing to do with the administration. You can't expect a judge to really go into and do it. Therefore, similarly, the Election Commission, under the Constitution, has been given a totally different role to perform. So it would just be overlapping and will create more confusion. What is essentially required is, now it's not even British era concept as such, because the Constitution is post-independence. So you can't go to that concept. But what is required, according to me, I'm just quoting an example. Let's understand, they have to honestly adhere to the oath under which they are bound to act. Nothing more, nothing less, but they are not doing it. Who should take action? And why should the central government do that? I'm asking a question myself, and you would kindly appreciate that. What happens in the case of President of India? The President of India also acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. There is no conflict. There is no overlapping. Nothing happens. As smooth as anything. The elected government, good, bad, wrong or right, I agree or I don't agree. The Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, they, on their aid and advice, the President of India functions smoothly. Why can't the governor then?
But with due respect, sir, Mr. Mittal, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is a fundamental difference. The reason why this analogy does not hold water is because, there are unlikely to be those kind of disputes between the president and the central government of the day, because it is the ruling party at the center which is instrumental in the election of that president in the first place. So in most cases, they're seen as being on the same page, as being on the same side. However, here we're talking about a situation where the center is accused of using its political appointee in Raj Bhavan to obstruct the functioning of a government run by another political party.
Now, you're right. As far as governor is concerned, there is no election as such, whereas the president is elected. That may be a different mode of, but if you look at the constitutional powers, the compartmentalization, the more or less perimeteria, what the President of India, the way the President of India is supposed to be functioning, the governors, notwithstanding the fact that the governor is not elected and appointed by the government, central government. It's all the more a reason that the central government should not interfere in the constitutional authority or powers given to the governor. It's their responsibility. But today it's so open that what is being done, governors are basically playing a political role, more as a constitutional authority. That's an unfortunate situation which has been created. As my learned friend pointed out, I'm just repeating for the sake of Delhi. Article 239AA is very, very clear and specific. Even though it continues to be an union territory, but nonetheless, the assembly and the executive powers have been given to the government, elected by the people of Delhi. You can't take away those powers. You can't in any manner interfere or see to it that the duly elected government in Delhi does not exercise or enjoy those powers. But what are we seeing looking at it? The Lieutenant Governor every now and then interferes in every issue, which is not his, by the way, role to play. Article 239AA is very, very clear. The administrator, that is the Lieutenant Governor, is only to act on aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Of course, 3 subjects have been reserved. That power has not been given to the to the Assembly or to the government. But for remaining subjects, they have. They are competent even to amend the Criminal Procedure Code under the concurrent list. The Assembly has all those powers. But I really don't know. They are railing under a wrong impression that simply because it's a union territory, the status as such is not of a state government. It may be a partial government, a state government as such. They say the Home Ministry would still rule the Delhi government, which is a totally wrong premise.
Okay.
The Constitution doesn't permit. After all, what is the purpose of 239AA? You want to belie 239AA. Please, somebody should advise. I don't know what's happening and why the Constitution.
I'm sure Arvind Kejriwal will be very happy to hear what you have to say, but we don't know who is going to give this advice to the centre.
They have, frankly speaking, I may not be happy with Arvind. I may be, there may be some issues where we are not, frankly speaking. But when it comes to the constitutional position, the power of the Delhi government.
Yes, it's very clear. Yes, you've made some very important points, sir. You, of course, believe that the governors are expected to display allegiance to the Constitution. However, they seem to be busy exhibiting their allegiance to the centre instead. And also, you believe that the governor's post is not entirely ceremonial. We need it. Indian democracy needs it. However, they need to act in a non-partisan manner. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening in most cases. Kabir, since Mr. Mittal talked about Delhi, you talked about Delhi earlier, and you gave us a very interesting example of when the Delhi Chief Minister was denied permission to visit Singapore.
It really hurt him. It really hurt him.
It really did hurt him to display the Delhi model of governance, right? But it runs much deeper than that. And why do I say that? I am again reading from the letter that Kejriwal wrote to MK Stalin recently, where he says the situation in Delhi is exacerbated since the Lieutenant Governor has regularly meddled with the democratic mandate of Delhi's legislature, blocked the presentation of Delhi's budget, and brought the functioning of the government of Delhi to a standstill under the guise of the unconstitutional 2021 amendment to the GNCTD Act. Now, of course, that's a very controversial act which we will probably need to debate another day. He goes on to say the actions of the Lieutenant Governor are hindering the functioning in every area where our government seeks to make giant strides, be it healthcare, education, water, power, industries, finance or infrastructure. Now, if this were to be believed, Kabir, this isn't just confined to a political tussle between the government of the day and the governor. Doesn't this then impact the people of Delhi? Because if infrastructure development is going to be hurt, if developmental work is going to be hurt, then it's the people who pay the price for it, ultimately.
Absolutely. And you know what works out for Arvind Kejriwal here is the sympathy card. I mean, it didn't work out as much for Rahul Gandhi when he got disqualified as much it does for Arvind Kejriwal. He's got two of his ministers in the jail, and the Gujarat model versus the Delhi model is certainly a prestige issue now for the Aam Aadmi Party government, and it makes sure that calling out the governor is their only way of indirectly yet softly but importantly touch upon that particular facet of how the central government is trying to become a hindrance for the Aam Aadmi Party in the national capital. But you know, from abolishing NEET in Tamil Nadu to calling out the ruling dispensation in Kerala about, Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan using his own party acolytes at top university posts, to various other skirmishes in this governor versus government, tensions that we're seeing. The governor's role is, of course, subjective. I agree with what Mr. Mittal had to say, when he's saying that we need this ceremonial post, because it becomes subjective in a lot of cases. You need the governor in some cases. When you want to, impeach the chief minister, you need a governor. The chief minister himself is not going to come and tell the governor that, look, my council of ministers and I myself are telling you that, I should be stepping down. That's something that the governor himself has to do. There has been a lot of commissions and, committees that have sat down on these particular issues, from the Patils and Nehrus of our country. 6 high-level committees and commissions in 1969 and 1980s alone. If I could just name some of them, sure. The Sarkaria Commission in 1980s, the Punchi Commission in the 2000s. We've got the National Commission to Review of the Working of the Constitution, and of the major suggestions by them. The governor should be an individual from a different state who was not recently involved in politics, and that the chief minister should be consulted before the appointment. Now, most of these recommendations, except for the test that the Supreme Court mandates, have not been given any weightage. So there's a lot of ambiguity. And when we're looking at colonial era rules that have to be changed, why not take a look at what the government has to do? We've got our directive principles and duties towards the country. The governor has its own. From where I'm looking at it, just to round this up, 2 prime questions. Are individuals that are appointed by the central government devoid of any political preference by the party at the center? And what is the level of discretion about the powers that the governor has? A lot of ambiguity over there, needs clarification. That is going to help, the people out for sure. A
lot of ambiguity and a lot of unanswered questions. Amitabh Tiwari, I'll give you the last word. Kabir, of course, makes an important point that over the years there have been several recommendations that have been made by various commissions, but none of those have really been implemented. Isn't it time that we put in a system in place where perhaps we went back to, bringing in technocrats and bureaucrats and, experts in diverse fields into Raj Bhavan, instead of just having political appointees with their allegiance to the center, and also, consultation with the chief minister? I mean, isn't that something really elementary that needs to be woven into this entire system, but we don't seem to have it right now?
Yeah, I mean, that is fairly elementary, and as Kabir pointed out, some recommendations also have been made in the past. So, apolitical people, as you mentioned, technocrats, bureaucrats, ex-bureaucrats, people from the industry could add some value to the development work which is being undertaken by the state governments, number 1. Number 2, they should be consulted by the chief ministers, just like the president is elected with the blessings of the central government. We should have some mechanism where the chief minister, and include the NOP as well, so the opposition will also have a role in the selection of the governor. And third is that also some of the powers need to be exercised by the president here. The governors are exercising a lot of their powers, but when a central government is appointing a political person as a governor, here the president also needs to step in and push back these appointments, because he also has an important role to play in our constitutional framework.
Interesting. You're saying perhaps the president needs to step in some of these cases. Well, this is a debate that will continue for a long time to come. But of course, the interesting thing to watch out for over the next few days, Kabir, will be, to what extent opposition parties can unite over this issue. Can they really make the central government actually sit up and take note of their grievances. Well, we will leave it at that. I'd like to thank Amitabh Tiwari, K.C. Mittal and my colleague Kabir for joining me on the show as we dissected this important issue. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out in the days ahead. Well, with that, it's a wrap on the show. Thanks so much for watching.